Howdy everyone, it's the fourth judge. We're back with UFC Fight Night, Matus Gamrot versus Quillen Salkilld. Let's get into it. So first up, like always, let's discuss the major popular topics. First, sincerely, RIP Alan Nascimento. Super sad to hear, man. I think he was only 36, 37, passed away of a heart attack in his sleep. We did want to bring up, we don't know what Dana White's doing. He posted this like 2 hours after the news broke and he had posted RIP. So, a little odd. But also, we also wanted to say farewell to our GOAT, Haley Cohen, retired after going 0-4. I mean, we kind of knew this was coming. She was kind of ass. But nonetheless, want to pay our respects. But let's get into it. Okay, first up, a little disclosure. So this fight, I've seen announced. We've seen announced online through multiple reporters, but we haven't seen the official UFC report come out about it. And that's because it's Gigi, I believe, is still on Tough. But we expect this to be announced by Friday. So we went ahead to go ahead and dive into it. So we have Gigi Canuto versus Carol Foro. So Carol Foro won her Contender Series fight and then popped for steroids about 5 months ago. So that kind of leads me just to go with her. On top of that, she beat Chanel Diyar, which she's the black British fighter. And she's done pretty well since then. Had a great finish her last time around. And so that kind of just leads me to go with Carol Foro. I don't think if she would have popped before the Contender Series, then I would have been like, I don't know. Or popped before and then came back and had a mid-Contender Series fight, I'd be like, I don't know. But in this case, I think I'm going to go with Carol Foro. I think she just popped, and I think she's going to come back, be dominant, and handle a not as veteran and not as experienced Gigi Canuto. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'll just take the other side here. You know, Gigi, she's on Tough, so she's going to have a little bit more kind of constant fight experience under her belt when they're fighting. She's also fighting out of 10th Planet. She has 5 subs already on her record, so I'll take Gigi to go. I'll say a sub before the bell here.
Gotcha. If I'm gonna go finish, I think I'm going unanimous decision to 4-0 or a TKO later rounds 2 or 3. But nice. Okay, let's get into the other confirmed fights. So first up, we have Juliana Miller versus Ravena Oliveira. So, man, this is a battle of the shitters right here, guys. Juliana Miller is 4-4 in the UFC. I think Ravena is she 0-4? Right? Something along those lines?
0-4, 0-3, one of those,
Yeah, really, really rough. And on top of that, it seems like Oliveira just bounces around weight classes and can't get anything to stick versus, Juliana Miller, even in her losses to I think it's Carly Judice, she showed good striking. So that kind of leads me just to stay with her because I really don't see anything good out of Ravena. So I'm going with Juliana by either unanimous decision or something on the ground, whether it be a submission or just straight ground and pound TKO. And I'm probably leaning towards the second or third round for that. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you on this one. Like you said, this is two not necessarily elite fighters, but Miller just shows more promise when it kind of push comes to shove. I think that this is basically just going to come down to Miller is better at grappling and better on the ground. Yeah. I'm taking this one as a Miller, probably a sub finish here.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. All right, next up, we have a UFC debut in Jessi Rosas, which is Raul Rosas' older brother, correct? And then we have Miles John, pretty veteran UFC guy, but coming off of 3 losses. I'm leaning Miles John in this because looking through Jessi Rosas' record and some of his fights, he's kind of fighting cans. If you look at his record, he's fighting guys, 23-10. Okay, that's fine. 9-15, 5-5, 6-5, 3-4. And we're putting him in the UFC. I think this is kind of more of a marketing ploy. Not a marketing ploy, but, a guy like, hey, guys, his brother's in the UFC. His brother's done really well. Let's see what he can do. But I think Miles John is not the guy you want to put him up against. I think Miles John had a bit embarrassing performance, per se, against Daniel Marcos last time around. But before that, against Gene Matsumoto, that was a very, very tough fight that I could see judged either way. And I think that Miles Johns is just much more experienced, has more problems for Jessi Rosas. And I see Miles John getting this done by decision. I see him just schooling him throughout the 3 rounds. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning with what you're saying here, where it's just kind of I think this is a pretty big step up for a debut. A lot of times they're giving people, someone who is kind of on their leg out almost when it's a debut. But I just to kind of keep it interesting, I think I'm going to pick Rosas on this one. It's like you said, his career isn't crazy, but Raul's wasn't when he came into the UFC either, and he kind of came in, and really made a name for himself. Mm-hmm. So, I guess on this one, I'm gonna go with Rosas, probably by like a submission. Yeah. His ground game is pretty decent. The smaller guys, none of them are known for crazy one-punch knockouts or anything like that. But he's got a decent ground game, so I'll go Rosas on this one by submission.
Yeah, and I mean, if we look at the history of John, man, he just is coming off that submission loss to Marcos, and Marcos is not good by any means at all. So, yeah, man, I can totally see that happening. All right, next up, we have Mr. Concrete Hands, Manuel Sousa versus Richie Miranda. So I think Richie Miranda is taking this on maybe 2 weeks' notice. And this is this Sousa's first fight outside of... No, this is his second fight since his fight night. He had a Contender Series knockout that was nasty. If you guys haven't seen it, please go look it up on YouTube. He essentially is like hand fighting with the guy, grabs his hand, and just puts his lights out. And so I'm kind of leaning with him. Richie does have a 4-inch reach advantage, but I don't really think that is matter. I think Richie is good. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Richie is a can by any means, but 2 weeks notice against a guy who just has concrete hands. And I learned my lesson last week, man. I picked Obon Elliott because I love Obon Elliott, and I cried. I saw him die out there. So I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to go with Mr. Concrete Hands, Manuel Sousa. I've been seeing some people mention like, oh, he's a knockout merchant. He can only go one round. But if we look at his record, he's gone late. That KO in the Contender Series was round 3. He's gone to decision in the LFA. I think he has the ability to get this done. And with it being short notice, I think he's going to get it done early. I think it's going to be a round 1, round 2, TKO or KO. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. His 2 fights in the UFC Contender Series and his fight night both were round 2 finishes. Round 3 finishes. Sorry, he has early finishes when he was coming from like Bellator and that kind of stuff. Like you said, yeah, Richie has a little bit of a reach, and I do side with Richie on the side of his grappling and submission game, but a 2 week notice against someone who's just deadly with their hands is going to be something to kind of worry about. I think this is just going to come down to, can Sousa keep the fight on his feet? And I think that this will probably be a good fight to see what is his takedown defense, what does his clinch look like, can he get back off the mat if he gets taken down? I think that this is a pretty good kind of fight to see, where Sousa is going to be going next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if he can breach through this, yeah, I think you put him up. But if not, if he gets this done, maybe round 3 knockout, maybe you feed him another can, right? I totally agree with you. All right, next up, we have the Vanilla Gorilla, Louie Sutherland versus Jose Montana. I think it's Montana. But nonetheless, we wanted to include this little pick here pre-UFC Louie. Man, when he first came in, I was kind of hyped about him, and then he got in there, and he looks like he does in this picture here. I'm not saying he was on steroids, but I'm saying, man, that is a different man there. But nonetheless, I'm still going with Louie Sutherland. I don't think this is really guided by... I don't know much about Montana. And on top of that, Louie went 3 rounds with Tuivasa. Now, by no means am I saying Tuivasa is any good anymore. He has just had stinker after stinker. But all of Louie's losses in the UFC so far, his past 2 are against pretty good guys. Brandon Parrish is a very good fighter, it seems like. And Valter Walker, we've seen him go on his run. So I think Jose Montana is just coming into this and is just not going to have anything for him. I think he's going to get it done. Probably, I'm leaning towards decision. But I wouldn't be totally shocked if it's, if Montana's going to win. I wouldn't be surprised it's not on the ground. But I don't see Louie really getting finished on the ground. He's built like a blob. I don't think you can get him in a choke. I think the neck is too big. I think he's going to get this done by just outlasting him through the rounds, or maybe getting it done maybe 2 or 3, and Montana just gasses out and he can finish in TKO. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm gonna ride with the debut Montana here. I'm kind of putting it out there. Not the biggest fan of Sutherland. Not a whole lot of reason why. Just didn't vibe with him when I kind of first saw him come onto the scene. Montana, he's 6-1. I think 4 or 5 of those come by sub. So I think that this is just going to be one of those. Can he get Sutherland down? I think Sutherland isn't known for his gas tank by any means. We obviously don't know if Montana necessarily is either, but I'm gonna say this is a Montana, probably a sub for this one. That's what I'm feeling.
Are you feeling early or late for that sub?
I think he's going to capitalize on a takedown. I don't know if he's going to be looking and hunting for a sub early. As the fight goes on, if his gas tank is better than Sutherland's, it'll become a little bit easier. But I think that this is just purely going to be, does Sutherland, kind of try to give him a trip and get on top from a clinch, or does Montanha get a takedown? I think this is solely going to be, when can I get someone on the ground and go for like another rear naked choke? I think he has 2 or 3 of those coming on a streak of all rear naked chokes right now. So that's what I'm going to go, is just capitalize on a takedown when Sutherland is kind of, just a mess on the ground. I'm not saying his wrestling is bad either, but I think the jiu-jitsu specifically is going to be on Montana's favor.
Gotcha. All right, on to the next one. Okay. Next up, in my opinion, we have shit versus shit here. We have Diyar, Nurgozhay versus Bruno Lopez. Nurgozhay, I remember the submission he had was out there when they did the Azerbaijan card, and it was pitiful. His ground game is horrendous. And I'm really kind of split on this. I see, if he's able to defend the takedowns from Bruno Lopez, I don't think Bruno Lopez is good at taking down anyone, but if he's able to stay on the ground, I think Diyar's got this. I think he's able to get this done on the feet, whether it be by KO, TKO, or decision. But if it goes on the ground, I think he's done. His ground game is god-awful. We've seen this with Ribeiro. We've seen this with Salkilld, like we were talking about with Azerbaijan card. He has absolutely no ground defense at all. Now, getting him to a ground is a different thing. At least with the Salkilld fight, I remember it was kind of a back and forth clinch up against the fence, and then he was down, and then I believe it was maybe a Kimura or something along those lines. But nonetheless, it really, for me, depends on where the fight is playing. If it's on the feet, I'm going Diyar. If it goes to the ground, I think Lopez locks up a submission easily. What do you think, man?
Yep, completely in agreement with this one. Diyar is going to be the guy on the feet. Lopez will be the guy on the ground. I think that this one is going to be one of those where Lopez knows it coming in, and is going to basically just try to make the fight on the feet hectic. Look for those takedowns because he feels much more confident on the ground, knowing that Diyar's ground game is terrible as well. But I think I'm leaning Diyar here, where it's as long as he can stay on his feet. I think that this could be a decision for him or a TKO kind of later rounds. But this is another one that's going to be solely based on, is this going to be on the ground or on the feet? And then you who's going to win this one.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you, man. It's really hard to make just a flat out decision where it's like, man, these guys both suck. But on to the next one, guys. We have the GOAT, Steven Asplund, Mr. Flabby Tits, versus Guilherme Pat. So something I want to mention, Steven Asplund's teammate, I believe, maybe it was Peterson. I think Peterson might be his teammate, fought Pat most recently. And I think Asplund was a big part of that camp to fight Pat. So I think he's got plenty of knowledge on how this is going to go down. On top of that, I think Asplund's just got too much on the feet for him. We saw Pat already lose a decision by Peterson, and that was kind of a back and forth fight, really a shitter. But nonetheless, I think Asplund's going to punch him up and really take him out probably. I'm going first or second round. I think Guilherme Pat's going to come in here and think this is going to be competitive, and I think Asplund just is going to have too much. I don't think Asplund's footwork is great by any means, but I think his striking is a high level for that division, at least for heavyweight. And that's not saying much, but still, I think it's too much for Pat here. So I'm going Asplund, TKO, KO, probably round 1, round 2. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you on the Asplund here. I personally, on my notes, have him down as a decision, but wouldn't necessarily be surprised by a stoppage either. In the past few fights, we've seen that he can get it done pretty early with his strikes. But I think that this one is his output is just crazy, where I could see him finishing, if it finishes early, Asplund by, TKO, just kind of overwhelming with his punches. One of the stats that I've written down is he's landing over 10 significant strikes per minute, which is crazy for any weight class, let alone heavyweight.
Yeah.
The only thing that I see with him is he does get hit sometimes.
Yes.
And Pat is definitely known as more of a power punch than Asplund. Asplund almost gives you that like Sean Strickland kind of vibe where it's like, I'm just going to be in your face, overwhelming you with punches for 15 minutes. If you want a way out, here it is. But again, I think I'm agreeing with you on this one. I think this is going to be a Steven pretty easy fight as long as he doesn't just get clipped kind of early. I could see a stoppage pretty early, and if not, then this is going to be a pretty, obvious like 30-27 for Asplund.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. All right, next up, we have Ty Miller versus Billy Ray Goff. Yeah, man, I really, really enjoy watching Ty Miller fight. Ever since he was on the Contender Series, he's a very, very fun striker. And they gave him Adam Fugitt is not that good by any means. But it's for your first fight in the UFC, that's not a walk in the park. And he handled it very, very easy, finishing it in round 1. Now, just to put some counter to that, Ty Miller does get hit. He's a good striker, but he does not care if he's getting punched while he's throwing his strike. So if you're able to clip him with like an overhand real hard, I can see that. And Goff does have some power. We've seen him put out Kinoshita a while back last year, KO TKO round 1. So I think there is maybe that worry if he gets clipped, but I really don't see it. I think his footwork is really good, or good enough, and I think his striking is really good. So I see a Ty Miller finish. Probably, I think Billy Ray Goff's a little tough, so I'm going to go, unless you can get him out of there by sub. I think he's pretty tough on the feet, so I think he's going to be maybe a later round TKO, KO, or unanimous decision for Ty Miller. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you this one. I'm kind of with you. Ty Miller was I've liked everything that I've seen from him. Given a small sample size in the UFC specifically, but watching some of his other tape, I've enjoyed what I've seen from him. I think that with the reach advantage on Miller's side, his footwork, the output, his boxing, just being real crisp. I think that this is just kind of a Ty Miller kind of day. I completely agree with you too, where it's either, maybe gets it finished later on, but he just moves well and has great stand up. Where if it doesn't get finished early, then it's going to be him probably a 30-27. It's hard to beat someone out on points standing like Ty Miller.
Yeah, man. All right, on to the next one. We have Amanda Lemos versus Alexia Thainara. For me, man, this is kind of the new guard versus the old. I think, Amanda Lemos has been around for a while, and she's got, like we were talking about earlier, she's got concrete hands, man. She hits very, very hard for a woman. But I think we've seen the best out of Amanda Lemos. I think this is going to be an older Amanda Lemos, and Alexia Thainara is just coming up, and she's very good, both defending takedowns, whether it goes to the ground, she can get a sub, and her striking is pretty good as well. So I'm going with her. I don't think this is going to be a finish. I think this is going to be a decision. But I'm going with Alexia Thainara for a unanimous decision win over Amanda Lemos. Probably a 29-28. I think maybe Lemos drops her in a round and gets a round off of her. But I think Thainara is ready to take on this new level of competition. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm going to Alexia all day on this one. It is one of those kind of changing the guards almost, like you said, where I liked Lemos in her UFC career. She's been in fights with people who, a lot of girls at this weight class just can't say. Lemos has fought people like Darren and Valle and Suarez and a whole bunch of just badass chicks in this weight class. But like you said, it's just kind of changing the guard. She's 39 at the end of her career here. Alexa is on her way up. She's going to have the reach advantage. She's 11 years younger. Great on the ground. She has 8 submission wins. Mm-hmm. Her striking looks decent. She just uses it a lot to kind of set up takedowns. Yeah. It's not like she's going to necessarily win a boxing match with Lemos. But BJJ black belt uses her strikes to get takedowns and get a sub. I'm gonna go with a sub win on this one. I could see it go in the distance, but I think Lemos is just not as good on the ground in the past couple of fights as she has been. When she was fighting kind of the who's who of this division. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna go Alexia by a submission. I'm thinking like round 2, towards the end of round 2.
Gotcha. I like that, man. I like that. All right. Next up, we have the Indiana boy, Darren Elkins versus Yadier Del Valle. So the first one, man, quit disrespecting Darren Elkins. Now, okay, Darren Elkins is kind of a shitter. I don't want to hear that from anyone. But Yadier Del Valle, I do want to say, man, that last fight against Jordan Levitt, we were talking about it earlier. If we remember, that fight had very weird odds. Like, I believe Del Valle was the favorite pretty strongly going in. and then the odds changed drastically, and then he got finished like round 3, or no, he didn't get finished. He got a decision, but nonetheless, it was like he was going for guillotines on Jordan Levitt, and Jordan Levitt would just slam him to the ground and then just keep him on the ground. It was like, why are you trying to have a submission battle with Jordan Levitt? Just take him on the feet. And Yadier Del Valle, I know he has a submission and 2 submissions in the UFC, but he is a striker. He has kind of a boxing style, but he just loves to jump that guillotine. And Darren Elkins is not a dude you want to jump guillotine on. He is known for getting out of tough guillotines. Now, I don't want to say I want to go with Darren Elkins, but because the odds are so crazy, I kind of do, man. I think that Yadier Del Valle is going to be nervous, and he's like, oh, I really need a good win after this Levitt fight, and I think he's going to be nervous. And with that, I think that he's going to be questioning himself, wondering if he's going to stay striking or if he's going to go back to what he was doing that got him the wins in the UFC, submission. And if he goes that route, I think Darren Elkins can get this done by just wet blanketing him and taking it to like maybe a split decision or even a unanimous decision, 29-28. So I'm going to go with the Indiana boy, Darren Elkins. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'll be on the other side of the fence here. I think that it's not bad if you want to sprinkle some money on Elkins right now with the odds, but I think I'm going to wait until 5 minutes before the fight when the odds switch and I can get Valle at like a plus 1,000 for some reason. If the odds change, I'll be a part of it for sure. But yeah, I kind of agree with everything you said, where this is going to be just kind of an experience battle on Elkins' side, where, for good and bad in this situation, he's seen all of it. So it's not like, a younger kid's going to be throwing something new that he hasn't seen. But he's like 75 in UFC years.
Yeah.
He's gone through some battles. There's a reason that his name is The Damage. It's usually not that he's necessarily dishing it out. He takes it just as much.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I gotta ride the favorite on this one, and you know what? I'm gonna say that Valle gets it done by a guillotine just because he likes to jump it. So keep it up in the air, make it fun. I think everyone's gonna be looking for it, but I think he's gonna get it this time.
Awesome. All right. Next up, we have our co-main event, and man, it hurts me to say that. Diego Ferreira, the 80-year-old man, versus not the young blood at all, Billy Quarantillo. It's weird to say that because I remember when he was a young blood, but man, he's a veteran now. I do not know why this is a co-main event, man. We had no one else to put in here, but nonetheless, I'm leaning with Diego Ferreira. Billy Quarantillo just gets hit way too much, man. And so not hit way too much, just is so chinny. And I just see, like, Diego Ferreira does have some power. I mean, we've seen him, he's put away Rebecca, and Rebecca's a tough dude. So I think Diego Ferreira, even though he's old as rocks, Billy Quarantillo is not a spring chicken at all. So I think Diego Ferreira is either going to get a KO, TKO early rounds, or he's going to be able just to beat on him for all 3 and get it done by unanimous decision. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think this one is going to just solely come down to like who has a little bit more juice left in their fights. Like you said, Billy is. It almost seems like he's aged harder in the past little while. He hasn't. You have to keep in mind too. He hasn't fought since the end of 2024, and he lost to a Cub Swanson that was retiring.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's coming off of 2 or 3 losses within the past year where you're like, oh, you know what? He's fighting some really good people too. It's a long layoff. Most recent, losses to someone who isn't amazing. It wasn't the Cub Swanson of his prime either. So yeah, I'm agreeing with you here on this one. Diego he's better on the ground. I think his strikes have a lot more pop to them still than Billy's does. Yeah, I think that this one is going to be just kind of who has more just juice left in him. And I think that that's just Diego from the fights that we've seen of recent. Billy just has looked rough, and Diego is getting up there, but still shows that, that he can fight. So I think that that's why I'm riding with him. Probably a decision. Like you said, I don't know if I necessarily see either one of them getting finished. If there is a finish, then I got to be on Diego's side by sub.
I agree with you, man. All right. And our final fight of the night, we have our main event, Mateusz Gamrot versus Quillen Salkilld. Man, I am, this is a very, very interesting fight. And the odds are very interesting too. We were talking about this earlier. Coming into this, when it was first booked, it kind of felt like, oh, obviously Gamrot, this is a step up too fast. But then you kind of look back at Salkilld and you kind of take into context where Gamrot is in his career, and it's like, man, maybe this is the new age of lightweight. Maybe this is the time that Gamrot needs to leave the top 10, and it's time to introduce Quillen Salkilld. Now, I'm not saying by any means that Salkilld has had, any competition that's on Gamrot's level. Yes, he's beaten a Dariush, but this is a very old Dariush, like we're talking about. But he has beaten Haqparast, and given Haqparast has never lived up to the hype that he had when he first kind of came on and did his little run in the UFC, but still, he's not a can at all. It was a little odd they gave him Malarkey after, but I think we were talking about, Salkilld has a good submission game outside the UFC, and we did see him sub Malarkey. So I think he's going to be able to handle the takedowns from Gamrot and not be lost on the ground. So I think I'm going to go with Salkilld here. I'm going to go with Salkilld probably I'm going to go either round 1, round 2 finish, whether KO or TKO, because Gamrot's just too chinny for me. Or I'm going to lean more to maybe it's a decision win. I wouldn't be super shocked. I think Salkilld can go into those later rounds with Gamrot. I think this is the new age of lightweight, and it starts right here. What do you think, man?
Yeah, as much as it really hurts me, I'm kind of agreeing with you here. I was a Gamrot fan for a long time. I really kind of started watching him towards the very beginning of his UFC career. I think maybe Jeremy Stevens' fight was when I kind of first tapped into him. And that was my whole thing. When I very first came out, I was like, dude, this is a giant step up for Salkilld. And then, like you said, you start digging it down a little bit more, and you're like, Gamrot, he is towards the end of his career here. He gets some wins, gets some losses. Kind of one of those where it's like, maybe you shouldn't have lost to that guy, and maybe you shouldn't have beat that guy kind of thing. And then completely agree with you. Everyone is looking at Salkilld like he's, Mayweather. He has no ground game. He's just a boxer. And I'm like, I don't think you guys are realizing that not only does he have submission wins, but like his wrestling is crazy too. I don't remember which fight it was. Maybe the Malarkey fight, where that was a round 1, so maybe not that, but there's been a few fights of his where he's getting into like the 4, 5, 6 takedowns in a fight. So it's not even like he's a defensive wrestler and just good on the ground. He's not afraid to wrestle either. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that he's going to beat Gamrot in a wrestling match, but I think just an older Gamrot, like you said, who's kind of chinny, I think that this is going to be a Salkilld kind of thing. I do kind of think this might be a Salkilld early, Gamrot late kind of decision, kind of thing. I think that Salkilld would still win on the scorecards, but if it goes all the way to round 5, I could see Gamrot pulling out like round 4 and 5 just because of his pressure, his wrestling style, and just kind of having a little bit more experience there. But yeah, I think that just kind of when push comes to shove, I got to go Salkilld on this one. Gotcha,
man. Yeah, I'm very interested in this fight. I think this is a great fight. Now, do I think it's a main event? Oh, okay, yeah, I do think it's a main event of Fight Night. But I think it's very interesting, man. I'm very excited to see this fight play out. But all right, man, let's wrap it up. What do you got for us in terms of the betting?
Yeah, so it's a little early. We're recording this one on Tuesday night, so it's a little early for a lot of the lines to come out. As you see on here, I got Fiera. I like him to finish before the bell. I'm not necessarily picking a KO or a sub, but I just see him getting the finish. And that's going to be a -175. And then I just do a little 3-leg parlay together. And I think that this is a pretty safe parlay, honestly. When you start getting into the 3 and 4 leg, it starts to get sketchy. But Juliana, Miller, I got Sousa, and then Asplund, just money line across all 3 parlay together to give you plus 155. I feel like that's a pretty safe bet. And then we talked about a few of them as we were going through here. If you got an extra $10, you just feel like kind of throwing around an Elkins bet when he's like plus 500 or whatever he is right now is not terrible. I think that as maybe no name as this card might be, I don't know if I see a whole lot of decisions, if I'm being honest, coming on this card. So, picking someone who you might like and throwing some money on a finish their way, I don't think that that's a bad thing on this card.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Like you said, I keep your eye out on the bet lines. We're recording this a little bit early, and with it being a low name value card, the betting lines typically don't come out till closer to the fight night itself. But nonetheless, keep your eye out for them. I think next week is when we have UFC 330. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited for that. We'll have a breakdown in Gary Makhachev. And then maybe we'll think about doing a reaction to a couple of the main events from that card, the main event, co-main event. But nonetheless, guys, let us know what you think. Leave a like, leave a comment, and we'll be back again next week.